Hey there, Dr. Christianson here. I want to talk about your best options for sunscreens. So for starters, sunscreens have not been documented to cut the risks for any skin cancers. Melanomas, basal cells, they've not been shown to be really relevant that way. So they can decrease burning, they can decrease some of the problems from that, but we don't know that they really protect you. So the main concept is to think about them not as a mainstay, but more so as a backup. You really want to have just sunblocks. You know, and to give some context to this, my family and I live in the Sonoran Desert, and I was more of a redhead when I was younger, but I'm still really fair, and they are all so white. We're like just really, really white, fair complected, and we don't tan, we just burn and maybe freckle a little bit more. So this is really critical stuff for us especially, high rates of all skin cancers. So you really want barriers, hats, and the bigger the brim, the better. There's so many good outdoor hats that also have the piece that fits across the neck over the back. Use shirts that have collars. You can also use a bandana around the neck. There are cool tricks also to offset the heat. You keep them moist and they cool you off dramatically. Pants, long sleeve shirts. You either want to be in the shade or you want to make some shade. I was out with a friend just the other day and I had a long sleeve white well-ventilated shirt made to be a sun protective shirt while hiking with a collar, and he had a short sleeve t-shirt, and he was so much more uncomfortable than I was. So all the places that have the most hot climates, people cover up, and it makes a big difference for that way. The other thought is eye protection. So your exposure to sunlight that's excessive is a large factor correlating with macular degeneration later on in life. And that's especially true for those that have lighter colored eyes, the blue or the hazel eyes over the dark eyes. So definitely protect your eyes as well. And the better sunglasses will have UVA and UVB protective lenses. Now sunscreens, there's a lot of chemicals you want to avoid. Vitamin A, believe it or not, is a big one. So it turns out that when vitamin A is on your skin and it's interacting with light, it becomes harmful to your skin. Oxybenzone, that's a big one to avoid. It and octinoxate are clear endocrine disruptors. They're things that just goof up our hormones, and that means they can cause worse hormonal symptoms, more thyroid problems, or raise the risk for hormonal cancers, breast or prostate cancers. Titanium dioxide, that's a good one to avoid. The data has shown that it will cause DNA damage. Now, a similar thing is zinc oxide, and we'll come back to it. There's nanoparticles of zinc oxide that many sunscreens have. You don't want those. They actually generate free radical damage on the skin. Other big things to avoid would be parabens and BHA. Now your best ingredient by far is zinc. And again, we're avoiding the nanoparticles. We're talking about zinc oxide. And the better compounds use clear versions of that. Some of the older ones, think about like the lifeguard with the white nose, totally worked. But it would be rather unsightly to have that all over. You'd be whiter than my family even. So you want zinc, but there are clear forms of that. So zinc acts as a block, not just a screen. And we don't know for sure that it helps us because ultraviolet light, the wavelengths, may bypass that surface still. So this is still a backup. The other thought about sunscreens is that we want to use creams over sprays. The sprays are handy, but the drawback is that you're going to inhale some of that. And these have not been researched in terms of their effects upon mucous membranes, like your lungs, your sinuses. You always get them in your mouth. They always taste terrible. And it turns out they don't cover quite as evenly as they would otherwise. So creams are better. And when we're talking about creams, we think a lot about SPF, or sun protection factor. Now, most experts have argued that numbers above 50 are just silly and made up. Legitimate companies probably max out their SPF between 30 to 50. So you'll commonly now see products in the 70 to 100 range. Not meaningful. That's worth avoiding. Think about 30 to 50 and know that they need to be reapplied on a frequent basis, especially when you're in water. The other thought about this is just vitamin D content. What's the drawback about blocking sun and avoiding sun in terms of losing our vitamin D formation? Well, vitamin D is not just about the sun. We get this from some foods, we get this from supplementation, and even with sun exposure, vitamin D levels can often be low. So it's not consistent that way. If you have complete blockage of the sun all the time, yes, you would be lower in vitamin D than you would otherwise. But the fairer your complexion is, the quicker you assimilate vitamin D from sunlight. The darker your skin is, the longer it takes you for that. So you can have some exposure early in the day, later in the day, and apart from the sun actually entering you, there's good effects that has upon your body's circadian cycles. You know, when you get some sunlight in the morning, your eyes and the pineal gland, they get that now it is morning, and now it's time to set the clock for 16 hours later to make you tired and get a good night's sleep. So it's still good to have some morning sun exposure. For those purposes, you don't have to actually be out bronzing. Just being outdoors without sunglasses, even in the shade, can still be helpful. My favorite brand in the market today is the Badger brand sun lotions, and those are blocks. They're made from clear zinc oxide. They're not nanoparticles. They do not have additives or synthetics or preservatives. So good stuff, works fine. But again, those are backups. Your real protection is clothing. There's actually these new brims I've just seen now that are made to go along bike helmets, because with a bike helmet, you don't really have much of a brim. So they look kind of goofy the first time I saw it, but I may have to take the plunge and go over to that for my riding now that's getting hotter here in the Sonoran Desert. So take great care. We'll talk again really soon. Bye-bye.